Okay, so we'll start off up here. So when arousal increases, your body experiences stress. So it's a response to increased arousal. Going up to this point here, stress occurs when a task is given, or the task given by a coach is not equal to what the person thinks they can achieve. And they look at that in terms of two things, in terms of psychological, which is their brain power, and physiological, so whether they can actually physically replicate the task that's needed. So for example, if a coach asks you to play as a striker instead of a defence, first of all, whether you can psychologically do it, so you're thinking, do I know how to play that position in terms of tactics and strategies, and can I guess what the opposition are going to do, and also emotionally, I suppose. So am I psychologically ready to play that? Have I got the confidence to do that? And then physiological resources, have I actually got the speed? Have I got the ability to be on target with my shots? So they're physiological, actually things that you can see more. So stress occurs when a task is given to you and you don't think. So perception is what you think and what you feel. And that is how well you think you can achieve what's being asked of you. And you don't really get a stress response if the answer is yes, I can achieve what's being asked of me. It's only if you feel you haven't got the resources to back up what's being asked of you that you will then get this stress response. If the game is perceived as important, that either, would be important to you and important to significant others, so it has significance in some way, then it's going to further add to this stress response. So there were two types of, there were two types of stress, and that is positive stress and negative stress. So what we're saying here is that not all stress is bad for you. In fact, they say that you need some amount of stress here. You need some amount of stress to give you energy and motivation to do anything in the first place. It's only when you see stress as negative that it's going to have a detrimental effect. So let's go through these. The positive stress is called eustress. It brings about excitement and stimulation, energy and focus, and helps the athletes to get things done. So that's from the textbook. So positive stress, an example would be you putting yourself into a final. So you possibly have an option, or somebody's dropped out of the team and you say, please can I play? Even though you're pretty nervous about it, you're quite concerned about doing it, you still put yourself out there. That's eustress, that's putting yourself under stress, but enjoying it, seeing all those somatic responses, that increase in heart rate and breathing rate, seeing that as a positive thing. On a further end of the scale, on the continuum, things like a bungee jump. So people do that purely for the excitement and stimulation. So on the other end of the scale, and it is a scale, so it can go anywhere between eustress and distress. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. If we think of it as a continuum, and if this is eustress here and this is de-stress here, you can be anywhere between. So a bungee jump, certainly for me, would be up here. And moving down, this would be entering your finals, or being volunteering to go into them. And then you've got being asked, for me, to play rugby or something like that. It would be de-stress, because I would be very much having somatic and cognitive anxiety about that, because I'd be worried about getting hurt because I don't know the technique, I'd get flattened, etc. So that's what we call the negative part of it, and that's distress. So why is distress a bad thing? Well, first we've got all the somatic symptoms of stress. So you would have increased heart rate, you would have shaking and trembling and tension. Those in themselves can affect your technique. They can mess your technique up, because they can make you less accurate and make you completely miss the ball or something like that you don't normally do. But also, even the somatic symptoms can cause cognitive symptoms, such as worry and apprehension, as I've put here as well. Your attentional narrowing. So it means that you can't really focus. So even if you did have a low level of skill, if you really have quite a high stress response to something, then you're going to suffer from attentional narrowing, which means you're only going to be able to focus on a very small part of the game, which is unlikely then that you're going to be successful. So as I mentioned before, stress is needed to prevent athletes from becoming bored. You need athletes to keep turning up to training. You need athletes to work hard when they're in training and have task persistence and fight through challenges and keep setting themselves goals. And without that stress, without this stress, being functional, I suppose, for motivation and energy, without it, you're going to become, as I say, stale, and you're not going to work harder. So there's two responses that you can get: this energy and motivation, which is linked to eustress, and a nervous and anxious response in which they try to avoid situations, which is your distress. So sources then of stress over here, and we've got internal and we've got external. So internal, first of all, and this is similar to intrinsic motivation. So internal sources of stress are personal. They're from within the body and your mind. So the thoughts, feelings and belief of how you are going to cope. Nobody puts those there. They're your natural response. A decrease in self-esteem here. So what you think about yourself occurs when you've got a decrease in self-confidence. And self-confidence was your ability to achieve success in a range of situations. So it could be, self-confidence is a global thing. It could be, I'm going to be successful in sporting activities, or in this case, I'm not going to be successful in sporting activities. And an increase in self-doubt, which means, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to mess up here, or I'm not going to do very well. It's doubting yourself. It's doubting that you're going to be able to achieve the task that's been given of you. So if you have a reduced self-confidence in a range of situations and you have increased self-doubt, so you've got niggles inside your mind telling you you're not going to be able to do it, then you are going to have lower levels of self-esteem. So if we've got lowered self-esteem, and this stands for trait anxiety, so that was the anxiety that you approach every topic with. It was a blanket anxiety, and it was something that you were born with. So it was an innate, which means it doesn't really change, and you were born with it. It's a stable quality that gives you a predisposition to behave in a certain way. So you would say, oh, Mark won't play these games because he gets really stressed in these situations. That's talking about somebody's trait anxiety. Maybe, and we're talking about lots of different situations. So you just know that they're going to behave like that, even if it's not the situation that they behaved with anxious traits before. So it's a blanket term. So low self-esteem and high trait anxiety will increase somebody's stress. So if you have high self-esteem and high levels of trait anxiety, you won't get as much stress. And if you have low self-esteem and you have low trait anxiety, you won't get as much stress. So this is the worst combination, but to be fair, usually goes together. So external sources, these are situational factors and sources from outside the body. Just like extrinsic motivation, it's what extrinsic motivation was what motivated you from outside, like rewards and trophies. This is what causes stress from outside of the body. And it comes from possibly a coach, but usually just the situation that you're in. So it's not the coach telling you, perhaps, but it's you standing on the pitch thinking, we're not going to win this game. Just seeing the team come out and they've got 2 new players. I know who they are and they're supposed to be pretty good. So you're uncertain now that you're going to win the match. This adds to the level of stress. The importance of the event can put more pressure on you, and therefore if you've got more pressure on you and you think, look, this really matters now, if I mess up it actually matters. It's not a case that if I mess up we're just going to stay in the league. We could come out of the league on this, so I've got to be better. So it's a combination, isn't it, of putting stress on yourself but looking at the situation, and the situation is making you put stress on. So that would be external. External is uncertainty of the outcome. So you're not sure whether you're going to win or lose the game, and the importance of the event. And if it's important to you and it's important to others, then stress is going to increase. So internal, what's within you, linked to self-esteem and trait anxiety. And low self-esteem, high trait anxiety is going to increase your levels of stress. And external factors, so they're situational factors from outside of the body, realising that you might not actually win the game, and teamed with the importance of the game. So if you're uncertain and it's an important event, you've got higher levels of stress. If you're fairly sure you can win the game and it's important, then you may just get a level of stress that's actually quite beneficial to your game. So just going through the stress response like we've gone in lesson then. So this is somebody looking at stress and saying, right, this is the order that it happens in. And they've put it into the 4 stages. The first stage is the cause of stress, and that's the demand that's being given to you. So that was the very first slide. That was somebody telling you you're going to do something. And in this case, we used Chloe and Bertie, and we said, yes, their dance teacher has just said, look, you're going to be in the chorus. I've had 2 people drop out in the musical. I know you weren't expecting to. So this is the task, the demand or task that is given that places psychological or physiological pressure. So immediately they're thinking, they're not thinking actually, they've just been given the task, sorry. Stage 2 is now they're thinking. They're thinking, can I do it? Have I got the physiological and psychological resources to achieve this? So this is their perception of the task. Do they perceive it to be okay, which Chloe did, or do they perceive it to be an impossible task like Bertie did? Stage 3, the stress response. So the athlete feels a level of threat, and in Chloe's case, she didn't really see it as a threatening situation. She saw this type of stress just to a level of eustress. She saw it as a positive. She saw it as a motivator because she felt she did have the resources to back up the task. So what happened to her was she got increased arousal to an optimum point, which motivated her to work harder. So this improved selective attention, or made her be in the zone, and increased her self-confidence because she practiced more. She was driven to practice, and therefore her level of performance was better than it would have been had she performed it right the way back here. So she actually improved her performance because of a level of stress. So this is a good stress down here, the eustress. Bertie, on the other hand, who did see the situation as threatening, had increased arousal, but to the point of anxiety. So if this was the inverted U, he was somewhere over here on this point. So he got anxious, and as a result got attentional narrowing. So he was on the stage and he's just thinking, I'm going to get this wrong. These are his self-doubts coming out. I've got the time wrong. So he's just focusing on the bad things. Therefore, he had a decreased level of performance. So that's 2 ways. This is the eustress and this was distress. So 2 examples of going through the stress process. You do need to know these 3 stages, and you need to know a general description of those 3 stages, which is in the yellow as well. Sorry, 4 stages, which is in the yellow. I know we did that in lesson, but I hope it was helpful to go through again.